Hi, welcome to another episode of Coffee with Mirko. It's your host, Mirko, and my pleasure to have you here. I'm looking forward for this episode, this chat today with Paul Ross. So I'm looking forward to have another episode of this podcast. I believe we're episode 93, which is mind blowing, and we're slowly but surely going towards episode 100. Episode 100 will probably take a break and end the season. It's been an incredible journey. So thank you all for tuning in. Stick around, saying hi to everybody. I think Paul is already in the house. We got Vag. Wow, we got the crew. Good
Hello.
morning.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we're all good. We're all good. How you doing?
Good. Good morning. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Yeah, another day in lockdown.
Yeah, you stole that from me, but no, joking. Yeah, I'm saying now that all the times. Yeah, another day in lockdown. Yeah,
It's
we
so
gotta
strange.
take it with the spirit. Yeah,
I think it's evening where you are, right?
yeah, it's 6, but because of the daylight switch, daylight saving or whatever it's called, it's quite bright, so it's not so dark. We're going towards summer, luckily.
Yeah, we're. I woke up in the dark this morning for the first time. I was like, this is sad. But anyway, we're all good.
I think the dark and gloomy weather is such a great excuse to drink more coffee. That's my
Yeah,
take.
exactly. We have to get through it somehow.
Yeah, and Paul, firstly, thank you so much for coming. I know you're a busy man. Appreciate your time and to be here today. And you mentioned the lockdown. Are you and your family and your loved ones all good, at least?
Yeah, everyone's healthy and getting on with it. It's as much as I could ask for, right? But yeah, it's just a strange time, I think, for everyone. Especially now. I don't know if you know too much about London, but we've just gone on stage 2 lockdown, which means it's just been heightened again. So everyone talked about the next wave of this, and so we're back from working for home if we can, and not eating out with people outside of our families and things like that. But it's all part,
Well,
I guess.
if it can, make you a little bit happy, without making it political, but in Melbourne, we were on lockdown since early July, but, pretty much since March, but, July went real hardcore. And, the last month we were having 10, 12, 3, 6, 15 cases a day, which is obviously still sad. I mean, there's been obviously
Yeah,
casualties in comparison to the, tens of thousands of cases around the world. It was quite how do you put it? Yeah, kind of surreal that we were in a full lockdown. But I guess, look, again, happy that Melbourne made it, and hopefully we'll get out of it soon. But anyway, this is not about the virus, the lockdown. Carried away. This is great. Paul, let's get started. How did you start your coffee journey? Tell us more about it.
my coffee journey started at university. I saw this guy talk, and I was very much into business and entrepreneurship, and he talked so passionately about his coffee company that essentially I asked him for a job, and he said no initially, and then I kind of convinced him that he should let me work over the summer. He then put me through the first stage of the SEA course, because he said if you're going to work here, then you have to know at least a bit about coffee. And then from there, I did my studies and went went off. And once I graduated, I got a part-time job at a company called Harrison Hall, which you may know through Baristas. Um, and then I went on and trained in coffee, started competing, and here I am. 8 years later, I think it is now.
Wow. And I think what I appreciate about the story the most was the um, persistence. I think that nobody teaches you the fact that you shouldn't stop at the first no. It's like, initially you
Yeah.
go for a shot, but you eventually. How was the process for you? Like, what if you said to you no a second time? Would you still be like, you know what? I'm just gonna fucking work for you for free?
I don't know. I was at the age where, you have nothing to lose. I think 19. Yeah, and just, you know, the world is your oyster at that point, right? Whereas now, I think you have to, like, there's more to it than that. I was pretty bold, and would I have said yes to me? I don't know. But I got the opportunity. I just have to be thankful for it. And I think throughout the process, it's not so much people saying no. It's more, I've been very lucky to get a lot of good opportunities and work with some great people. And because after Harrison Hall, I moved to London, and then London is obviously this epicenter of great coffee. And I worked with some great people here. And ultimately, I think coffee is a story of people who have given others opportunities, and you just have to try and take those opportunities, right? If and when you get them. But that's also difficult in itself. But
For sure. And what was your coffee love and passion before that sort of event? Like, was it where you new to coffee when, like, or you were just like regular drinker at uni, sort of caffeinated?
I think I had my first cup of coffee. Sorry, I know when that internship was. It was when I was 21. It was first time I had a cup of coffee, and that sort of went from there. It was like, I was always I love food and drink, and like most people, right? But I think that's probably when it really sparked that difference. And I think Harrison Hall was the first place that you tried the washed Ethiopians that were super floral and acidic, and the Panama coffees from Los Lajones, which were just something like I never tried before. So all of those things put together were kind of like combined at the right time for me.
Yeah. And just for the sake of the, for the kids at the back, what were you studying at uni?
Well,
And did you still
I
finish?
studied business management and entrepreneurship. Well, with like a side of entrepreneurship on it. So business management. So we did like things like reading accounts and marketing and business stuff. I remember one module was all about queuing and the different styles of queuing and how efficient they were and things like that. So there was some more applicable stuff these days. But at the time, obviously.
Did you finish? Did you finish your course out of curiosity?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. Back. Well, it was over 10 years ago now. No. What was it? When was it? It was like 8 years ago, 9 years ago now. So yeah, it seems like a long time.
I think that it's interesting you started business and entrepreneurship, because I think that, there's this mystical cloud on top of the word entrepreneurship, and it has a certain look, it has a certain appeal, and it looks usually along the lines of good-looking lad on a fast sports car and some very nice designer clothing. But it's far from that. I think that being a coffee professional is just being as an entrepreneur as being a banker or anything else. And for the sake of the exercise, any industries really, because what you did was very entrepreneurial. You were like, after this, I'm going to ask this guy for a job. He said no. You're like, no, I'm going to ask again. And that really is the spirit. It's just a matter of a bit of improvisation, but also just keep moving forward, because the one text, email, DM that you send today, it's gonna, you don't know where that is gonna take you in 10, 12, 17 weeks.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's quite funny actually that all of us who work in coffee, we work in hospitality, not necessarily coffee, and you have to see the business context of that, right? And so it is interesting that you have to, go after these opportunities and make the most of them. And it's tough because in coffee there's a really small hierarchy, right? Well, from my experience anyway, it goes baristas, then management, then owners, and there's few big special coffee companies. So the question that everyone has is, once you've become a barista and you've done it for a few years, what do you do next? Do you go into management and step away from the coffee machine, or do you what possibility is there? Roasting, but that's also different to being a barista. It's less, customer facing. So I think the business aspect, trying to make your own way, is very tough, and it's something that I've thought about a lot, and I've discussed a lot amongst the people I know in the industry, because I think it's important to give people those opportunities. One, because I got given them, and I'm very thankful for that, but also longevity of the industry. How to train great people.
For sure. I think there's 2 points to what you said. Number one, which is encouraging people that are listening, that at least, even though it's smaller than other industries, when you do send a DM or when you do reach out, very rarely you're going to find a rude, closed person, because if they're in hospitality, 9 times 0.9 out of 10, they're going to be warm people. And that's what I found in the past 9 years, but even the past 6 months, I've been reaching out to lots of people for the podcast, and I've never received, the worst that happened has been a no answer, which are probably still in their request, sort of, in the DMs, but nothing's going to happen. Nobody's going to bite you. Nobody's going to punch you or judge you. You're doing what you got to do, which is hustling your way through it. And the second part is answering the shortest and hardest question, which is why? Why coffee? Do you love people? Do you want to make money? Well, then, if you want to make money, you're looking at opening, potentially a franchise. Then you're opening shops after shop. If you hate people, but you still want to be in coffee, then maybe roasting could be potentially good, because then you don't have to deal with people so much. This based on what your passions are. And if you just want a job, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. But obviously, I'm talking from a super privileged position, such as Melbourne, where baristas, or even Australia, baristas are considered professionals, and we can quite well live. So I think finding that sub passion underneath coffee, I think, is essential, because then there's no right or wrong, because you can become anything, but then once you understand what you love, I think
I think you hit on something super important. It's like, why does it's true in any job, why is someone there, right? Why are they there? It might be someone to support their family. It might be because they love what they're doing. It might be to get them through school. It might be anything in the world. And I think one of my best experiences in coffee was when everyone had a similar goal, but different objectives. So their day-to-day goal was have a good time, deliver great coffee, and have fun doing it. Whereas everyone had different objectives. And at that time, it was a shop in London, and we've all gone on to do different things, very different things. And yet we all have this one similarity, that we had a great time and had that opportunity. But I think it's because we all understood each other. We were all very different, but we all understood what we wanted out of the process. And as long as you allow people that margin to do that, then that's all about understanding, right, of what people want to get out of the process. Because not everyone does want to compete, who wants to, some people just want to get home at 5 o'clock and hang out with their family, which is cool. Each to their own.
Absolutely. And I think in terms of longevity, as you were saying, I think it's a super relevant and beautiful word, because I think longevity really, we should attach longevity to sustainability more, because sustainability is all about longevity as well, right? To make sure that we're here for as long as possible, or at least, the humans. I think that probably I'm going to go 3 steps back on what you said. I think the biggest obstacle at the moment, the hurdle that many people face, and I feel for everyone, is the family, the culture, the society aspect of it, where they might be judged, or they might be receiving a strong, disappointing sort of looks, look down at, and like, oh, coffee, come on, like, when are you going to get a real job? And I think that's the biggest hurdle that we sort of, if we look at longevity, we need to have more and more conversations publicly about the fact that you can have a just as good life as a coffee person, coffee businessman, coffee person, and a family, and a rental or a small property, because it's been done.
Well, it sort of reminds me of something I got told at university. So we all went to university after school, and we were sitting in the lecture theatre, and the teacher puts up a slide, said 50% of people in this room, I think it was 50% of people in this room, will have a job in 3 years' time that doesn't exist now. And so you think about it now, it's like you're aiming for a job that doesn't exist. You're studying for a job that doesn't already exist. And well, I mean, I never thought I'd work in coffee, for instance, but think of the jobs that exist now, like YouTube streamer, I don't know, in-game advertising. I was looking at the other day, was like, it was mad. All these things that existed, well, didn't exist 5 years ago, now become a thing. And I think that's difficult from I'm talking from my family position anyway, is we were very, the like traditional job roles were, the thought plan. And a lot of my friends have gone off and worked in the city, and, wear suits to work, and work for the government or whatever it may be. But coffee isn't that traditional job. And I think it took a long time for people to understand that. But ultimately it's happened, and, competition is a big part of that, and in the industry, because it has that exposure that maybe coffee shops don't get as much. But I think it's all part of an education process, and I think a real pinch point for me was when one of my parents texted me saying I preferred the Kenyan coffee to the Ethiopian, and I was like, oh, we got through eventually. Leave the bags on the side, and it's worked out. But you can't. Also, on the flip side of that, you can't be too pushy. You can't push back too much. You have to be quietly confident in what you're doing, and that's not always easy either.
Absolutely, and look, I have been super lucky because I grew up in a smaller town, kind of village vibe, but in summer in the village and a small town in winter, because that's what school was. And I was being always lucky with my parents, because my mom, despite being in education herself, she's a teacher, and she's one of those people who love to study, just like, that's her passion. That's fantastic. It's history, philosophy, Italian literature, it's, big books, big library in the house. When I told her I didn't want to go to uni, look, I'm sure I killed her a little bit inside, like, for sure. But what my parents have always been good with me is that ultimately the last question after sharing their opinion has always been, are you happy? That's all they care. And I think that's super relevant. When I told them, hey, I'm going to stay in Australia, they did not expect that I would have stayed 9 years and I would have done what I have done. But they always ask, are you okay? And as long as I'm okay, they're happy. So I think I'm super privileged from that regards. And also, you're right, like, on educational system, it's difficult to understand, like, certain professions, like you mentioned. I mean, geez, there's 13-year-old kids making millions of dollars playing video games, and adults tend to demonize that. And I'm like, well, here you are with your XYZ job, which is all good. I respect everybody. I'm making 60, 80, 100, and here is the kid playing video games making 2 million in 6 months. And it's difficult because if you don't comprehend something, then you fear it, and you get defensive, and then you go against it, which is fair. Like, I can't judge parents for saying not to play too much video games, but at the same time, it's not wrong playing the video games. So yeah, I love where you went there too. I mean, it's all about the timing as well. Where, you know, if you were born 3 years earlier, maybe your career would have been different, or 3 years after, maybe you would have been doing again a different thing. Yeah. And how did you go about competing? Was that for you a natural move, or was it, what was the clicking motivator factor?
The thing for me was at the first job at Harrison Hall, there was a great trainer there, and there was a great internal competition that was coming up, and so I just threw myself into it. And luckily, I had the time and had the ability, and they funded everything internally. And from then, they went on to whoever won that. They sponsored in the national championships. So I competed in that, and then it just spiraled from there. And then that's when I moved to London, and I don't know if you know, I met Will Pitts, and I think Dan Fellows, who's been on here. They're great guys. I've learned a lot from them and the people around us at that time, and it just went from one to the other. And I travelled. Well, we're very lucky in Europe that travel quite cheap. So I think I volunteered in Gothenburg. I got the cheapest flight out of there, and volunteered. And yeah, since then, it's always been a part of my life, basically.
And how good is it? Like honestly, I was smiling when you mentioned Dan Fellows, because met him once on a live stream on Instagram, but now, I don't know, it's a beautiful human connection, just because, you know, the three of us in this case, or the hundreds of us, share and connect thanks to the love of coffee. Like I really struggle to see, you know, an industry that's so tied together when it comes to even this. Like, how good is it? Like you just said, hey, Dan Fellows was here. I was like, yeah. It was actually, and yeah, anyway, that's beautiful. And just for people who are really listening to this, young, older, doesn't matter. You know, being a barista is not easy, but I think a lot of people, you know, eventually get around it. But I think competition, we sort of go next level as far as not really being a stroll in the park. What's your suggestions? What's your 2 cents to give to the people at the back? If someone's thinking to start competing, hang on, you froze for a second. Here you are. I think I got you back.
Thinking to start about competing. Yeah. Sorry, did you say thinking about competing?
Okay, yeah, sorry, you were spinning, now you're back, so that's good, we're good. Yeah, so what's your 2 cents for the people who are about or thinking or want to start competing, and what's your reality check on that?
I would say competing is a big step. It's a lot of time, it has a money implication, and it's difficult. It's not certain. So it's a big decision, firstly. The way I would make that decision is ask why do you want to compete? I think for me now, looking back, I'd only ever compete if I had something to say or wanted to show. And it's taken me probably 4 years to really understand that of competing. The first couple of years, I was probably just myself into it and, you know, hoping for the best, whereas now I feel like there is a goal at the end of it beyond just where you come, essentially. This year I worked with fantastic coffee from Barista Shatar, a triple staggered aerobic geisha, sorry. It was incredible coffee, and I really wanted to showcase that. And it got me, well, I was super interested in instant coffee just as a process and like the scientific element behind it. behind it. So we actually made it into for example. So the point that, going back to the question, it all goes to why do you want to compete? What do you want to do with that? And there are a lot of pros of competing. Some of the best people I've met in the industry through competition. I was very, very lucky last year as well. I think Dale's been on here as well, right? So,
Yeah,
Dale, I reached out to Dale and Pete, and they gave me some tips for the worlds as well. Like you said, no one has ever said anything bad in response to a reach out, and they gave me some tips. And so you meet great people. You can potentially have a great time. It's very highly stressful, but at the same time, it comes with some great rewards. I don't think I'd have necessarily the position that I have now without competition. So that's another thing. But then, as I said, the flip side of that is the time invested. It's hundreds of hours every year. It's either you have to self-fund, someone who's willing to fund, and ultimately things could go wrong that are out of your control. So as long as you're prepared for that. Am I frozen again?
I can hear you, but you're beautifully stopped and frozen time, which is oh, here we go.
There we go. So it's a risk, right? But it's a risk that's sort of paid off for me. So I can only talk from a position that it has taken a toll in terms of, time. Just mental capacity is huge. It's very difficult, but it has been great too. So I wouldn't change it, but I know it's difficult.
Well, we actually got a big question for VAG, which I'm sure you know. Yeah. And before we read the question, though, I'll just ask you, we're at the halfway mark, and I always ask this question to the guests, the out-of-the-box question. If you could, Paul, who would you like to have dinner with?
In coffee or in the world?
Alive, not alive, future, past, present, anybody.
Interesting. Do you know what? So they'd have a running in there. So Kipchoge just went for the breaking 2 record. He's up there. So one of my school friends just mentioned one of our teachers. Who else would I have? Probably someone in the world was. Who would I have? Jonathan Ive from Apple. He's like the head designer there, and I think he's one of the people that I really look up to in the world. Probably someone for the world of business. Who would I look for in the world of business? That's a difficult one, actually. There's a lot. Well, in the world of business, there's a lot of great people and there's a lot of dubious people. So I don't know the answer to that one. But those two are the people. And then I think in coffee, there's some people. Do you know what? Some awesome people doing some great things. I've been fortunate to meet a lot of them along the way. But someone like, I don't know. Do you know Caleb Freezer, for the Finnish champion who moved to San Francisco?
It sounds familiar.
Behind Southern Coffee.
Gotcha.
I met him briefly once, but I'd love to pick his mind one day about his journey. yeah, it's, it's one of those things that world champions and, national champions get a lot of coverage. Wrongly or rightly, I feel like, a bit of their story. And so I always want to know a bit more,
Of
because
course.
we see the coffee side, whereas I feel like there's a lot more going on. And the more I learn about coffee, the more I want to know the reasons behind decisions. And I think someone who taught me that is a guy called Andrew Tolley, who I know him better. He was one of the founders of Taylor Swift's, and there's when I started, there was a lot of decisions that I didn't really understand, but now having talked them through with him, I understand so much more, and it makes so much more sense. And very intelligent man.
Well, that's quite a list. Definitely a few interesting people out there. And yeah, look, it's always a difficult question, but I love asking it. I love seeing people's responses. And going back to Vag, what are some of the biggest lessons that you have learned through competing?
The biggest lesson is like burnout is real. Burnout happens. It is not a nice place to be. It's exhausting. It's tiring. It's hard for the people around you. It's hard for yourself, and is look after yourself. And this applies to being a barista too. It's hard being a barista. It's hiring. Sometimes the wrong customer walks in and ruins your day. But the one good thing about this is you realize that 99% of people are good. It's the one person that walks in a day that's bad that ruins it. So look after yourself. My escape in that was basically I was overtraining. I was training. The more hours we tried to train, basically the worse we got. And so now what I do is limit my training to a couple of hours after work, but more often. And then I'll go running. And I don't listen to music. I just think about the day, and then next day do something different. And so I think my biggest lesson is burnout is real. Look after yourselves. Some people go running, some people do yoga, some people, read a book. Whatever it may be, do your thing. Have a glass of wine with your friends. Whatever is your option in life, balance that off with competing, because competing comes and goes, but your life will always impact if you let it take over.
Real talk. Like that's beautifully said. Thank you. I think we'll touch base on that in a minute after Maureen questions. I think, burnout, mental health are real, I think, and they're not quite talked about enough. Thanks for sharing, Paul. And Maureen is asking, what does it take for a barista to be part of competitions? And I jump in just to sort of give the short answer, and I want to see if you agree or not. I think often it comes to just doing it. Who cares about placement? Because doing it and knowing the rules and knowing what's happening and being it, it's like playing a game. You can read instructions as many times as you want and practice, but until you start playing that game, you just don't know it. So that's my 2 cents, but back to you, Paul.
I think you're right. It's easy said than done, right? So one of the things we did this year was kind of like open up our competition boxes and say to any of our baristas, anyone who wants to compete, like here are the tools. But it's difficult. You're right. You just have to do it. It's like learning anything, though. It's like going back to running. It's like running. You have to go running to get better, and the only way is to go running more, and that's ultimately it. Really, like you do a bit of stretching, you can buy new shoes, but really, you just have to go running. basically. And that's
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think you're right, and I think on a more, I suppose, holistic level, I think self-esteem and don't be too hard on yourself comes into place. Because guess what, Maureen, you never be perfect. We none of us will ever be perfect or reach a stage where yes, now I can compete. I think you just gotta go with it, and you know you'll be extremely surprised. And yeah, like you said, it's like with push-ups, right? It's like you can read about how, you know, the form and starting from wall push-ups, and you can read, you can watch, you can learn until you start doing the push-ups, you know. And that's the same with running, which funnily enough entangles quite well with a question that I have. You know, if you didn't have running, would you have the mental strength that you have during competitions or during a shift? Because let's be honest, running, from my understanding, from my bio running, because I'm not kind of runner, because I'm already super skinny, and you know, I'm trying to not lose any more weight. But eventually, I want to run in the mountains when I'm back home. But anyway, that's between you and I. I want to do mountain running, which is super hard. But anyway, now I'm rumbling. Where I was going. From my understanding, running is often more about the mind than the actual body. Sure, the body is important, because if you yeah, fuck, no shit. But how important is the mental component of running alongside with competitions and also being a barista?
I think the way I view running is that at the end of the day, a working day, especially at competition, there's 1,000 things going through your head, right? Whether you should dial in differently, or, you know, there's the wrong coffee, or, you know, this bit of equipment arrived. And then when you go running, it just narrows it down. And my aim at the end of running is to have like 2 concepts, 2 ideas that is what you action the next day. It kind of like filters down what is important, and ultimately you're trying to remember to breathe and things like that, rather than what cup is more white than the other cup, you know, like, or more round, or whatever. It just, those things really don't like very end. Whereas conceptually, that's what matters. That's what matters at the start. And so for me, running was that escape initially, but it became more a part of my life. Whereas I met people through coffee who ran, and then we now run a lot together. So actually, it was at the World Championships with Dan. It's a bit of a funny story, but I got stuck in Portugal for a bit. So basically, I was late to the World Championships, and Dan had to take all of his bags with himself. And when I arrived, Team UK, so Frida was there as the cup tasting champion, and her coach at the time, Ryan, was there too. And I had never met Ryan before, and we got chatting about running. And now we run together, and this was 2 years ago now at the World Championship, and now we run together a couple of times a week, 3 times a week. And he's an entrepreneur and a good friend of ours, and yeah, it's amazing what happens when you share that passion, you know.
Yeah, and I think another great, you know, barista champion, we got Miko Jasin, who loves his push biking and as well as running. So yeah, there's a few of you guys out there, and yeah, I think it's super interesting. But in connection to running as well as competing, kind of merging the two with Maureen's question, I'm currently reading a book which people are probably sick of hearing the title, because I've said it a few times that I'm a slow reader, so tough luck. It's called The Outliers, and basically they've done a science, well, the book is not just about that, but fraction of the book was describing how in order to excel, on top of when, where, and how you were born, you know, your background, your environment, was it the right year, the right season? There's so much science behind it, psychology. But one of the key components is that often in times, the people, the elites in each industries have done a certain practice for over 10,000 hours.
Yeah.
The, for instance, a famous example was Bill Gates was lucky enough to be in the right school where they had a strong connection with this like center where they had this like supercomputer, one of the very first ones, and they were actually looking for students to sort of have a play around with it. So he had an immediate access right next home, which if he was born in another state, he wouldn't have had that. So he had thousands and thousands of hours at disposal to play on that super, well, at the time it wasn't much of a computer. I mean, it was a computer, but not like we have them now. And it's interesting. So it's saying we're running, like you said before. I think it fit perfectly. You can only run longer if you keep running and you punch in the hours.
I'm aware, like I've read about the 10,000 hour concept, and I think, I mean, it's different for everyone, right? And I think we spoke about before, we're super privileged to be in the positions we are. And there is an element of right place, right time. And that is an element of it. It's a roll of, I think it's a roll of the dice sometimes. But ultimately, you know, the people like Dan, Will, Dale, the champions that have come from the UK, I've witnessed firsthand that they've put the hours in. And these are hard hours, you know, like at 11 o'clock at night when the shop's closed and you're locking up and you're like, what have we achieved today? What have I done? And it's incredible. It's incredible because ultimately you have to have the head strength to believe that you can do it for the whole time, despite not ever achieving it until the very end, which is incredible, really. And I think that's the hard part, is that self-belief, right? And it's the thing I see most in coffee or baristas is people, and I guess this is true in life too, but people lack the self-belief to put this out there. And I was just lucky enough to have that self-belief at the start. For whatever reason, I don't know why, but it just happened.
Well, you know, give yourself credit. I mean, obviously there's a zillion reasons, as in, you know, the way you were brought up and, you know, the one time that school XYZ happened, and, you know, that all the elements that formed the person that you are and we all are. But yeah, I think that the self-belief and having the confidence and the sort of self-esteem is such an incredibly intense crisis that we're living in the past 5, 6, 7 years. And I don't want to point finger at social media. I don't want to point fingers at anything in particular, because I think that things get demonized quite easily when actually, you know, they're not. But I don't know quite what it is, and it's quite a big topic, and probably for some anthropologists with a few master degrees beyond the walls and not just a couple of coffee tours. But it's interesting, and I think maybe this is a place where we can give a voice to people like yourself and inspire the people who maybe are, you know, putting a little bit of a brake onto their cars when it comes to go for it. Yeah, complex. But
yeah, it's
I think
complex. It's super complex, and I don't claim to have the answers. It's just funny looking back, you know, and now working with a lot of baristas, you see similarities and differences equally between everyone, and you know why they do it, right?
Yeah, and I think in coffee in particular, I think probably a strong answer goes down to that concept of what, you know, how it's considered being a barista. But then again, there's no right or wrong, there's no good or bad, in the sense of then, you know, okay, the job as a lawyer has been seen as, yeah, it's good, but then there is so much things that are not going right even in that industry, you know, talking about burnouts or certain other elements. I mean, then what is it, you know? So yeah, it's super complex, and very fascinating. I mean, I could talk about this stuff all day and hear what people got to say, because I love hearing different opinions for sure. Going back on the burnout element, if you're happy to share, because this is quite personal. When did you realize, shit, I crossed the line? But also, when did you actually, like, realize it and you start, okay, I need to slow down? Like, because it's difficult, because it's 2 steps, isn't it, or 3, the recovery?
I think I've been very lucky to have very good people around me
Hmm.
throughout my career. I think that I'm very lucky to have people around me for a long time as well, so they understood how I worked and what I did and how I went about doing things. So in 2017, I was the Coffee and Good Spirits champion, and I placed 8th at the Worlds. That was the closest I came to it, really, is because we were making cocktails before work, doing a 10-hour shift at a big London coffee shop, and then making cocktails afterwards for about 4 months. And it really, I just wasn't eating properly. I wouldn't say it's burnout, because people experience a lot worse, but I was just tired. I was tired of everything. The people, the baristas around me, were just miserable to work with. We laugh about it now, because they were just unbearable to work next to. So I apologize to them. But I think, and then there was a guy I work with now, Josh Tullo, who is our head of coffee. He said to me a couple of years ago, he was like, I'm not staying after work for 4 hours. He's like, I'll give you 2 hours, that's it, and then let's go home. And it worked. I mean, he's a lot more, his approach is a lot more relaxed anyway. Not relaxed in a bad way, he's very professional, but very relaxed, and it's very, when he peaks, it's very soothing, and it flows really well. And so we have different styles, but the one thing we agree on is burnout. And burnout's more for other people go through it as well. People lose weight and don't go out, and so my biggest lesson is not so much that I've experienced the heights of burnout, but I can see its possibility. And when you start teaching on that edge, you just have to recognize that, and eat properly, and do everything properly, and
Yeah.
later on. So yeah, I'm not claiming to have gone that far, but I can see its possibilities ultimately.
Oh, thank you for sharing. It's very private, but I think it's super relevant and super valuable to hear it firsthand, because the acknowledgement and the I'm going too far. I mean, you still went through it. You just, obviously, like you said, you were surrounded by beautiful people, which I think it's super relevant. But also you had the mental strength, maybe from the running, to sort of to that. And look, we're not here to preach, do this or do that, but I think it's important to realize that is something that can happen in any industries, and it's okay. I think accepting it's still okay. I don't think that if people are in that position right now, I think it's super cool. It's just it happens, and it's very natural. You shouldn't feel any way that you feel what you gotta feel, and then eventually, with help from people, or like you said, taking a step back or slow down. One of the YouTubers that I sort of watch when I got time, Matt Davella, he just started a new concept which is called slow growth. So because he was into building new habits, so for all 2019 he did 12 different habits for 30-day challenges. So a cold shower for 30 days, or meditation for 30 days for an hour, and amazing filmmaker too. So his videos are really good. And then he realized that, you know, we all want to run fast, but it's actually the slow growth that actually gets you there at the end. The classic, you know, hare and the turtle, which is funny, you know, like we get those stories told as kids, and they turn out to be quite relevant in our adulthood. So it's quite fascinating, actually. But yeah, thank you for sharing. I think it's super interesting, and you can all sprint for 3 months. Competition is a marathon. Paul Ross, best advice I've been in my competition time. So there you go.
I said this to Vag this year in competition. Obviously, it was slightly strange because I was competing as the champion to defend my title, and Vag was also competing, and this is what I said to him. I was like, you can't go 100 miles an hour constantly. It just doesn't work. And so yeah, it's that slow growth, right? Of if you chip away at these, then it will work out.
Yeah, and I think those days that you don't want to show up, and those days that a bit harder and darker, and you want to only do one push-up, well, it's just, you know, I think it's better doing one push-up a day. At the end of the year, it's 365, than doing 365 in 2 days, and then you gotta literally be in bed for 3 days straight or a week because you fucked up your body. Like you know, I mean, between 1 and 365, there's different numbers, but for the sake of for the exercise here. But yeah, absolutely. Sprint marathon, I love it. I think I've used the marathon even though I'm not a runner often talking about marathon. So yeah, I love it. And look, we really dive deep, and I didn't realize we got like about 8 minutes left, and you got about to start your day. I'm about to, you know, finish. So I kind of want to leave you with a bigger last question. I hope we got enough time. We covered a lot, and thank you. Super grateful for your time. Thank you for being here, for what you said, what you shared. I think it was just super cool, and hopefully one day we get to meet you, Vag, to share a cup of coffee in London or Melbourne or wherever. So hopefully we get to share that coffee with Vag and yourself. And ultimately, what's your coffee mission? And if we got enough time, what's next in your world?
Coffee mission. Coffee mission. That's a difficult one. I think my like sort of mantra, as it were, is to like improve a bit every day. That slow growth is that improve every day. And how can we improve most? So like where are the real gains in the coffee world? There's a lot of areas to battle, but we also have to, you know, pick our fights. I think the thing is, how can we improve our businesses to be more hospitable? How can we make our coffee programs better? On the coffee side, there's a lot more knowledgeable people than me on the, you know, the green and producer side, and I don't claim to know everything there. Whereas what I do is sort of, you know, front of house, it's how to brew coffee. That's the things I can change very quickly. I think in terms of that is how, having been a barista and worked behind the bar for basically 6 years, how can I help that side of the business and help as many people as possible. One of the things we've just done is, this might be unique, I'm not sure, but we have a London living wage. So there's a national government, if you employ someone, you have to pay that. But then London living wage has worked out what costs above that to live in London. We just put that into our business, which means everyone earns London living wage. Which seems strange, but they can afford to live in London, right? But that's one thing. And what's next? So the World Championships is probably next in Athens now. Unfortunately, I didn't get to go to Melbourne twice. Coming out next month was the plan. So that's been scrapped. But one of the things I've been doing this year is, as national champion, what I wanted to give back was give everyone a taste of what it took to have a competition style coffee. So I've been freezing the 50 coffees of the year, and at the end of the year, the plan was to do a cupping of the 50 best coffees of the year that everyone. But that's been put on hold slightly. In fact, I just got 3 coffees from Australia. One from Sub-Zero, a couple from, but Lewis brought them back for. What else is next? Just trying to get through this as well. I want to promote sort of my philosophy now is more like promoting hospitality, and there are, especially during this lockdown, there are great businesses out there that are doing great things that I think should be shouted about more, not shouted at. Don't shout at them. Shout about them. There's a small coffee shop yesterday called Paradox. As they have like this small container in a market, and it's absolutely fantastic. Places like that are real heroes of London that don't get the coverage they necessarily deserve, but they're excellent. And so I think we all the people in competition especially have this platform to shout about great coffee businesses, and especially ones that haven't had a great time this year, and that's where I can make most impact, especially now. There's big world problems, but my impact the greatest impact that I can make right now is shouting out like people like those who do such a good job in hospitality and have worked so hard to achieve what they have. This year it's been a real struggle, but they're showing real strength by getting through. So that's my greater mission, I guess, in this time, is share great coffee and support great people, and hopefully that pays dividends in the long run for everyone.
100%. I think very noble, and I loved hearing that. Thank you, Paul. I think I'm sure you will see more from you, about you, of you, and look, giving back to people in the people business that we are, because that's what we are. We're not in the coffee business. We're in the people business first, and I like the fact that you covered that just then. And maybe we can have a second version of this in our second season. I decided to have season 1 at 100 episodes, so that's the goal. So
I absolutely love that commitment to like creation. It's amazing, fantastic.
Well, I think for episode 100 we're gonna have something that people have been asking and trying to get. So we can comfortably say that we're gonna do something on the episode 100. Then we'll probably do a little pause, and then we're gonna start season 2. But yeah, hopefully on season 2 you come back and we'll hear more about you. Maybe we can have a little more interactive session at the cafe. But I believe that we've got 30 seconds left, so sorry. I will love and leave you. Have an amazing day, and thank you again, brother, for sharing all you shared. Appreciate it.
Cheers.
There you have it, guys. Episode 93 with Paul Ross. Amazing lad, a runner, an entrepreneur, student of life, and a coffee professional, world champion, and an amazing experience to just see his side of things, learn more about him, but also his struggles, his wins, and all the insights that he is able to share with us. So I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate each and one of you. I think because the connection was bad, not many people could get in, but that's okay. This will be recorded. If you're new, welcome. Thank you for being here. Appreciate you. This is going to be recorded on our podcast, IGTV, YouTube. So go and check them out. If you got Spotify, Apple, what it is called, the Tunes podcast, Google, Chromecast, and we're pretty much on every podcast platform. So if you just discovered us, go and check it out. It's a good, probably way, if you enjoyed it, to catch up with previous episodes. Feel free to take a screenshot or reshare our IGTV of these episodes or episodes that you liked. And I would love to, obviously keep this coming and growing. Like I said, we're approaching the end of season 1, and I want to say just a big thank you for who's still in the house. My man Vag, Tanti, Stephanie, Maureen, Lily, and we got Lower Boy, Fatsa, and Sonny Gerzond. Thank you all for being here. Appreciate you all. Have a good morning if you're on the other side of the world. Have a good evening. Have a good afternoon. Good night. And stay safe. I love you all, and we'll see you soon.